Welcome to I'mPossible Conversation. I'm your host Suki, and my goal is to introduce you to the ordinary people that are doing extraordinary things. I'mPossible Conversation is all about you, your story, and your journey. My guest tonight is Simon Raybold, also known as Presentation Genius. He is a public speaker and a public speaker trainer, creator of the Presentation Design Pack. He has also written plays, directed opera, and been professional actor and fire eater as well. So let's find out more about him today. This is Simon's story. I'm going to bring him to life feed now.
Hello, Suki. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm a little stir crazy from COVID-19 with being stuck in the house for so many weeks, but I'm okay.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much for coming and deciding sharing your stories.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it.
Okay, let's start. Usually my very first question is, what's your favorite quote? Because I believe people's favorite quote would sum up who that person is. And I've asked you yours, and would you like to tell me about it?
Do you want the sensible quote or the there you go, the hammer quote? Yep, from my dad.
I want that one.
Yeah, if if the idea is don't fit things hard with a hammer. Don't right. If it's not working, don't kill yourself on it. Just find a smart way of doing it. Get a bigger hammer, get a different tool, or think differently, or find a smart way of doing things rather than just headbutt and headbutt and headbutt. Partially because it hurts, and partially because it's inefficient, and also partially because it's an awful lot more fun to hit things with a big hammer than it is to hit things with a small one. But he was what he was getting at was having the right tools for the right job, getting the right training, the right perspective, the right equipment, and also the right experience. It led down to this whole idea. I don't know if you know that there's American Army slang where they go, train hard, fight easy, which is one of those things my dad was getting at. If you've got the right kit, the right equipment, the right training, the right practice, the right exercise, then actually doing the thing, whatever it is you're training for, that should be a lot easier. So if you have the right equipment, if you have the right hammer, the nail goes in easy. If you have the right piece of software on your computer, the day goes easier. If you have the right friends around you, the party is much easier. So it's about having the right tools, the right equipment, the right preparation, and the right practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really love this quote. It's especially because you said it's your dad said that.
Yeah.
When I asked people what's your favorite quote, and people come up loads of different wonderful quotes, but like you are probably like third person who's coming up with their parents their quote, which is quite endearing, I guess.
Yeah, Dad was quite special. He's dead now. He's been dead for quite a long time, but we all think of him very fondly, and usually to laugh at some of the things that he did. So there's a family story that before he died, a long time before he died, he had throat cancer a couple of times, and that meant that they cut everything out here, and he used to breathe through a hole here, a stoma in his neck here. And there's a family story that he used to wear a cravat because it looked quite dapper and it didn't get in the way of his breathing. But he used to bet people a pint in the local bar that he could hold his breath underwater in a bucket longer than they could. So these guys would go and put their face down in a bucket of water, and they could last for a minute or so. And my dad would just go, fair enough, I can match that. But because he's breathing here, he puts his face underwater. But because he's breathing from, I'll just move out there, just because he's breathing here, he's breathing perfectly normally, even though his face is underwater. So he can hold it looks like he's holding his breath for minutes and minutes and minutes. And that's the kind of guy he was. We kind of have these very, very fond memories of him.
So sounds like he was like a very fun person to be around as well.
Yeah, a little bit irresponsible sometimes. Very, very irresponsible sometimes, but a lot of fun. I can see what's going through your head now. You go, so that explains a great deal about you, Simon. That's exactly what you were thinking, wasn't it? A little bit irresponsible. Yeah. Yeah, that's where a lot of the theatre stuff came from, because I started doing that with my dad when I was yay high to a grasshopper. Before I became a research scientist and before I started doing things professionally, I used to do them with dad on an amateur basis, which was where I got the love of it from, I think.
So what your dad used to do? Was he an actor or was he?
He was an actor and director. He was semi-professional, so he got paid a little bit, but he didn't make a living out of it. But it was always fun to be backstage with him and just see the stuff that was going. So you kind of got to see it from the audience's perspective, and then you got to see it from the backstage perspective, and you could see the difference between the swan gliding along on the top of the set, and everybody looking perfect, and then backstage everybody's running around like a complete nutter, desperately trying to get things to hold together. Gaffer taping the sets together, standing into their costumes and the costumes being sewn up while the actors were still in it because there wasn't time to, that kind of thing. The kind of thing that amateur theatre was all renowned for. And then I kind of went a little bit more pro than he did. That's all. But that's where the love of it started.
So does that mean, because you've been working in a theatre and you know like what happens in the backstage? So does that mean when you go to the theatre now and then watch it, you probably won't watch it the same way like other people do?
It depends how good the thing is that I'm watching. If it's rubbish, then I sit there and look at the lights and I look at all that kind of stuff. But if the show is good enough, no, I've got the mental self-discipline to be able to turn off the inner critic and just enjoy it. Afterwards, I'll talk about it in the pub afterwards and go, technically this, technically that, technically the other. But while I'm in the actual theatre itself, I just enjoy the performance, enjoy the show, enjoy what's happening in front of me. The magic goes away if you think about it too hard. But there are occasions, my wife will tell you, she's busy at the moment, but there are occasions when I've leant across to her and gone, I know enough about how to do what they're doing to know that what they're doing is physically impossible. And then, because if you get some really, really good theatre stuff, you just kind of, it doesn't matter how good you are, you just look at it and go, oh my word, that's something else entirely. Something else. So, for example, with the fire eating stuff that I used to do, I know how to fire eat, it's great, but then you go and see somebody like Cirque du Soleil who take it to another level, and you just look at them and go, okay, I know enough about fire eating to know that should have killed them. But it hasn't. They're doing something special. They're doing something above and beyond what is normal.
Yeah, some of them stuff are amazing, because I used to go to the circus with my mum and dad when I was little, but not nowadays a lot. Yeah. No. So let's see. Let me ask, like, how would you describe yourself if someone asks, who are you, Simon?
I'm a professional presentation skills trainer. So what I do is help people who have to stand up at the front of the room who aren't professional speakers, and they have to make a presentation. So, for example, somebody might have just got newly promoted from being, let's say, an accountant to being a lead accountant, and they now have to make presentations to the board, or they have to make, they have to report to the board, or they have to make funding requests, or they have to do pitches for work and that kind of thing. So they go from doing the thing to talking about doing the thing, which is a lot harder. It's a bigger shift than people think it is quite often. So that's what I do all day, every day for a living. I do very little of the theatre stuff anymore. I still do a little bit just for fun now, but it is now just for fun. The grown-up work is presentation skills training.
How did you come into that? When did it start?
It started about 15 years ago. Pretty much exactly 15 years ago. I was a research scientist for 24 years. My PhD looks at the causes of childhood leukemias. So I was trying to find what it was in the environment that gave kids blood cancer. And then I stayed on after my PhD. I stayed on at university to be a researcher. Actually, if I was still there now, I would be working my working myself to death because I was what they call a spatial epidemiologist, which is a person who looks at the physical patterns of diseases. Well, you can imagine in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, me and my team would have been right at the front of going, where is this going to go next? We've been trying to predict out whether you could take down lockdown and that kind of thing. So that's what I did for 24 years. And then I realized that people didn't quite need research. Well, they did need research, but they didn't need research as much as they needed to apply the research that had already been done. And one of the reasons that people don't apply research is because scientists are notoriously bad at explaining it. And if people don't understand it, they can't use it. So I got more and more interested in the communication of the science rather than researching the science, if you see what I mean. So I spent 3 years at the university researching how to make better presentations. And I realized that it wasn't just the research scientists that needed those things. It was, to be honest, almost anybody who stands in front of an audience that needs those things. So 12 years ago now, I gradually left the university and formed my own company. And that's it. That's the story of how you go from a research scientist to a presentation skills trainer. It's not as big a journey as you think.
Yeah. So because you were a research scientist, and have you done many presentations based on your findings to different people? That is had resulted much more. It was much more effective than just normal scientists would do. So what was the outcome?
Fewer than you think. more than most scientists. A lot more than most scientists. A lot less than I wanted to, and a lot fewer than I could have. The world was a different place 10 years ago. We didn't have popular science. We just had scientists doing their thing, and the rest of the world over here not knowing about what the scientists were doing over here. Now there's people like Brian Cox and a whole bunch of popular science programs on television that are kind of breaking down those divides. And I was part of that process in a sense of breaking down the divides a little bit. Now you've got places like here in Newcastle, you've got the Centre for Life, which is both a research unit and they've got a theatre in there where they make things go boom and explain why it's going boom to the kids that are there. None of that existed 10, 15 years ago. I mean, literally the Centre for Life existed, but the culture of doing that didn't exist. So it was more radio, I think, that I did than anything else, because it's much easier to go on Radio 4, for example, and explain something to a huge audience in quite complicated ways, actually, because a Radio 4 audience, you can assume they know quite a lot of what's going on. But then I just got more and more interested in the communication rather than what it was I was communicating. So yeah, I don't know, at one point I worked it out, I'd done maybe 200 presentations in a year.
Oh, wow.
Which is, I mean, don't get carried away. Most of those were half a dozen people in a room.
Yeah.
Some of them were, hundreds of people on an auditorium in a stage and that kind of stuff. But most of them were 12, 18, 20 people in a room. It was a lot. Don't get me wrong. It was a lot.
200 in a year. That's a lot.
I think it was actually a bit less than 200. I've forgotten the exact number. It was a case where I was thinking, am I going to get to 200 by the end of the year? So it was 187, 186 or something in that. But it wasn't quite 200.
Simon, that's 200. Yeah.
If you count the number of times I've practiced the presentation to my wife as the audience, then it was well over 200. Yeah.
No, okay. Oh, that sounds amazing. So what would you describe yourself? Because you've been scientist, you've been in a backstage, you've been actor, you wrote opera.
Yeah, I've directed opera.
Well,
that was
directed. So how does it work?
How does directing opera work? Usually it goes horribly wrong. You put energy in, you get something out at the far end. How do I describe myself? I think what I'm
normal. They have this huge voice.
Yes, but they have trained to have that huge voice in the same way as other people trained to be an accountant, or an athlete trains to be a runner, or a research scientist trains to be a statistician. They just train to sing. It's the same. People have a skill and they practice and develop that skill. The director's job is to put those singers in the right place at the right time to make the story come to life more for the audience. And the director's job, to be honest, is actually, to get back to what you just said there, how do I see myself? And one of the things I think I'm best at is not necessarily doing the thing, whatever the thing is. What I'm best at is going, so that thing with that thing put together makes another thing. So I would take the set, and I would take the lighting, and I would take the singers and put them together to make an opera. When it comes to doing my research, I would go, there's this data, there's that technique, there's this evidence, there's this research protocol. I would put them together to make an experiment. And I have to say that this is going to sound so egocentric. So please forgive how this sounds awful. It sounds really, but I'm going to say it anyway. Research doesn't work like people think it does. It doesn't work like it works in the movies, right? In the movies, scientists sit down and they go, I wonder what happens if you do so and so and so and so and so and so. In the real world, what happens is that scientists look at some data and go, that shouldn't happen. What's wrong with that? And they work backwards from cock-ups and screw-ups and that kind of thing. But if you get it right, if you get it right, and you've done you've got the data clean, and you've used the right techniques, and you've asked the right questions, and you've stuck at it for long enough, there comes a moment when you look at the computer and the computer goes, R equals 86, P equals 0.00 something, and you go, oh, yeah, okay, wow. Oh, I now know something that nobody else on the face of the planet has ever known. I have discovered a thing. I have discovered a fact. I have discovered a relationship. I have discovered something that no one else has ever known. And that type of creation is astonishing. And it lasts for about 3 minutes until you go, well, it's the best thing. And then you go, oh no, I've made a mistake. And you have to start all over again. And the next time it happens, but maybe in 24 years of research, that happened maybe 20, 25 times, maybe 30 times. But it's an amazing feeling when it happens. You go, I've discovered something. I've made a breakthrough. I have changed the way people understand what is going on in the world around them. It's a phenomenal feeling. Changing the way people understand things, changing what we understand as a species, what we understand of the world. It's a privilege and a joy beyond comparing. It's kind of the same sort of thing. Sorry, I promise I will let you ask me a question in a minute.
No, I'm enjoying it.
It's the same sort of thing as when you go on stage. Because you're creating an understanding in the audience's head. When you make a presentation, there is information and knowledge in my head, and by the end of the presentation, that knowledge is in their heads. It's dangerously close to telepathy. If it's a good presentation, that is. It's you get something from your head into the audience's head, and then the penny drops, and they go, "Oh, okay, I get it. So that means that if I do this, then that happens." And then they can change their world. You've given them a tool that allows them to change. It sounds pretentious, doesn't it? But just even if it's just changing their little bit of the world, just a little bit, that's quite a buzz. That's quite an honor. It's also quite a responsibility, because if you tell them the wrong thing, then you're making the world worse. But
yeah, so you have to be confident.
yes, and so I'm going to start frothing at the mouth now and getting on my soapbox and ranting, Suki. So bear with me for a second. But it's one of the things I believe very strongly that presenters should do is be very clear when they are giving evidence, when they are giving proof, when they are giving their opinion, and those three things are not the same. They're very, very different. Proving something is not the same as giving evidence that it can be true. Giving your opinion and whatever is not the same as proving something is true. And yet so many people, professional speakers included, go on stage and they go, here is the truth. And the audience trust them because that's what audiences do.
Mm-hmm.
And the presenter says something that sounds plausible and sounds right, and is possibly right for some of the population. It's probably true for the speaker, but it's not necessarily true for most of the people most of the time. So when I go on stage, one of the things I'm very, very proud of, very, very keen on, is that if somebody challenges me for any of my facts on stage, I can go, well, not on stage because I'm busy, but when you get off stage, I can go, here is the research paper that I'm drawing that from. The name of this research scientist that I spoke to is this, 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 and this. I mean, I can't always, having spoke to research scientists, of course you can't, but you get the idea. Everything is research to the nth degree. So, for example, for the last book that I wrote, which is where I got the label Presentation Genius from, I hate that name, I hate that name, I hate the name. But that's where the thing came from.
Oh, I got this one.
Oh, you got a copy? Oh no, that's the little big voice book. That's yeah, I wrote that one. That one's about 15 years ago now. I think I wrote that one. The most recent one is that one.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, when I wrote that, it references 400 research papers. Heaven help me, when I sat down to read 400 research papers, my brain bled out of my ears. Because even with 24 years experience and training as a research scientist, just sitting down and reading 400 research papers, you just lose the will to live by about research paper 200. By research paper 400, they're just blurring and all becoming the same. And you can't hold anything in your head any longer. Thank heavens for Evernote to keep notes and to keep track, and thank heavens for my team who helped me with do that. It's great for them. So for me, it's all about being. The word authentic is floated around quite a lot these days. They talk about people being your authentic self. And I have very little truck with that. For me, the message is the authentic thing. What I'm saying has to be the truth. Not a truth, not my truth, but as near as damn it as we can tell at that moment in time, the truth. I know there is no such thing as the truth. But we have to be as close to it as we possibly can be. As speakers, as presenters, opinion has no place on the stage as far as I'm concerned. That's an overstatement, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's just only that person's thought and opinion. Because I believe nothing's absolute.
Yeah, there are some things which are more. Gravity, for example, is pretty absolute. We've got a reasonably good idea how gravity works, but some things, as soon as you get into
defiable.
Yeah. It's hard to defy gravity. You can jump and you can try, but you are going to come back down to ground at some point. And mind you, I have seen some dancers who appeared to have switches where they could turn gravity off, because I swear they just stayed in the air for far longer than was physically possible. They were a joy to work with. They really were a joy to work with. I just loved. My CV says 7 years as technical director for the NYDC dance company. That makes it sound like I'm a dancer. I'm not. I'm not. I can't dance to save my life. Yeah, no. Technical director means I was in charge of the lights, the sound, the video, the dance floor, the props, the sets, everything except the actual moves of the dancer. So working with them was an absolute joy, because they could just go up into the air and stay there, and it was just fabulous working with them. I loved every minute of it. That's a lie. I loved having done it. I hated most of it because it was 14-hour days of really, really, really hard work.
Probably that work just seemed like not work when you enjoy things so much. At the end of the day, it felt like I hadn't worked at all. I was physically exhausted, but when I heard the audience applaud and looked what we had got on stage, it was
the narration just floated away. Yeah, it was great. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So if I ask what the most defining moment in your life, what would it be?
None of the above. None of the above. The thing that I have done that I am most proud of, the thing that makes me most me, are my children, daughter 1 and daughter 2. They do have real names. It's just that I just call them daughter 1 and daughter because it's much easier than.
When you say daughter 1, daughter 2, I always think there's a hashtag somewhere.
Yeah, there is sometimes a D #1, D #1 and D #2 because it's just so much easier to type than their real names. Apart from anything else, I don't know if anybody else does this. I'm pretty sure everybody else does this. When you get people's names wrong and you start, come on, you must do this. I'm not the only person that does this. You start by calling people the wrong name. So I've got 2 daughters. One, I swear, is called Stemegan, and the other one is called Stephanie, because I start to shout the wrong name and then have to put the right name at the end of it. So it's just so much easier to call them daughter 1 and daughter 2. But they are the thing. Of all the things I have done right, they are the thing. Of all the things I've done wrong, they are also the main thing. But of all the things I've done right, they're unrealistically, unbelievably proud of how they have grown up. To be fair, most of that was the influence of my wife rather than me. But they're astonishing people. One of them is an anaesthetist in an ICU, so she's right frontline COVID at the moment. And the other one is, I describe her as a professional revolutionary. So she's working with charities in social development situations.
Yeah,
phenomenal people.
I always feel that the proud that moment when you talk about daughter 1 and the daughter 2. And to be honest, I don't know their names, but like daughter 1 and daughter 2.
One and daughter 2.
They're both amazing.
They are astonishing people, yeah. And to be fair, that's mainly down to my wife's parenting than my parenting. My parenting was very, well, I'll give you an example of my parenting. My wife and I have been married for over 36 years now, coming up for 37, I think. And in all of that time, my wife has only ever completely, really, really, really lost her temper with me 3, maybe 4 times. Which, given how much I provoke her, is amazing. But one of the times was when she came home and found me teaching my 12-year-old daughter how to do fire eating. Because apparently putting burning paraffin in your mouth when you're only 12 years old apparently is irresponsible parenting. So my parenting skills are not of the best, perhaps.
Because that's like giving them freedom to do what they enjoy. I'm not sure if they were enjoying it or not. Probably they were.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, children love crazy things.
Yeah, but to be fair, actually putting fire in your face probably was a little bit too crazy. It's not something I would recommend for other people's children. It's fine for me to do it, but not for anybody else, because I'm a hypocrite.
Like, don't do it at home type of.
Yes, don't try this at home, kids. Don't try this at home. Yeah.
So what makes you the happiest?
Oh, they do.
Like, they do.
That was easy. They do. That was easy. So I give you an example of this. About a few years ago now, daughter 1 spent a year traveling around the world. And at one point, my wife and I flew out to meet her in Argentina, and we spent some time bumming around Argentina, really doing the traveler thing. So we were sleeping on overnight buses and hostels and no hotels. It was all doing it like you're a 20-year-old, which is not bad for mid-50s. We were quite proud. But there's this moment where I messaged Steph, my daughter 1, and said, "Where are we going to meet?" And she said, "I'll meet you in Buenos Aires." Hang on. That's not like saying I'll meet you at Monument or I'll meet you outside the so-and-so pub at 7:30. Buenos Aires is 13.5 million people. It'll be fine, Dad, she says. It'll be fine, And sure enough, it was. We got to our hostel in Buenos Aires And this is where this story is going, a thing that made me happiest. I was walking up and down the street outside this hostel and then turned round, and about 100 yards away, I could see her coming, running towards. And just seeing her for the first time in months and months and months was just absolutely, it was just fabulous. So things like that, Christmases with them and that kind of thing, those are the things that make me happiest, without a shadow of a doubt. Performing on stage is great. Being a research scientist is phenomenal. All the other stuff that I do, which is so much fun, the fire eating and the drumming and all of that kind of stuff, playing the djembe or playing the cajon, it's fantastic. But the thing that makes me happiest is when I look at my kids and go, do you know what? I did okay there. I did okay. They don't need me anymore. The kind of sign of a successful parent really is when you're redundant. Does that make sense? When your kids don't need you to be their parent anymore, you know you have done a decent job. So they are kind of the thing that make me happiest. There are other things that make me happy. Playing my cajon makes me very happy. That, the Peruvian box drum, making presentations and getting feedback from people afterwards. I was going to say hearing the applause, but that's not quite the thing that does it for me, because I don't really listen to the applause. I listen to the silence, which sounds like a weird thing, but anybody who's been on stage will know what I mean. All the applause does is tell you whether the audience thinks you've done a good job. The silence before it tells you whether what you did was a good thing to do in the first place. So I get that. All those things are great, and getting feedback afterwards where people go, that was, that tool you gave us then, that's really made a difference. So, for example, I think you saw me on stage once when I did a very, very small gig for IMD, International Men's Day.
Yeah, I did, yes.
Yeah. And I got some emails the following day from people who were in the audience who, when the tool you gave us, they cited a specific tool. The tool you gave us then, I've just used it this morning, and it's made a world of difference. I kind of go, that's a pretty cool bit of feedback, I spent an afternoon doing something that I enjoy doing, and then I get a message the following day that says it's made a difference to somebody's life. What is not to love about that as a way of earning a living?
Absolutely. Do you know, Simon, because I've been in that presentation, I downloaded a 5-minute journal application on my phone, and it's been there since. It's from that day onwards. Okay, so
there's an example. I mentioned it. It was one of a dozen things that I mentioned, and I've got it on mine as well. On my phone.
I know you got in your position.
My phone is very carefully turned off at the moment, so I can't show you because it's. I don't want it ringing. Actually, do you know what? There's an example of how much my kids mean to me. My phone case is photographs of my kids. But my phone is turned off now, so I can't show you my 5-minute journal because it's on the phone.
So thinking back, because you've been in various different jobs and then paths, being scientist, public speaker, and I'm sure there was something for you to learn and some challenges come across, or was it all plain sailing, or which one was the most challenging thing you would overcome?
I don't know that there's a particular moment I want to share. There is a type of moment which people will recognize when I describe it to them, which is that despair moment when you think, I can't do this, I'm out of my depth, I don't know what to do. I can't do A because of B. I can't do B because of A. Nothing I do is working. I'm inadequate. I'm not up to the task. I'm out of my depth. And I'm sure people will recognize that. Now that has happened in all three of my careers repeatedly. It happens in everybody's life. So there are specific examples of that which are worse than others, but the type of thing I'm sure people will recognize. It happens to everybody. nobody's life is plain sailing. It would be very, very boring if it was. There would be no point in it if it was. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to belittle people who can't cope. I'm not getting that as well, because I've been in that situation, and believe me, I know how rubbish it feels. But there is always, for everybody, there's that moment where you just go, I'm out. Nothing works. Nothing matters. I am not only hopeless, but worse than hopeless, I think, perhaps, is I am pointless. Nothing I can do has an impact on anything or anybody or the situation. There's nothing to be done. So I think those hopeless situations are the answer to that question. The things that, the challenges to overcome. It's those times when everything you have done has not worked, and you have nothing left to try. You've got no more energy. You've got no more ideas. That was a very serious answer to that question. Sorry, Suki.
No, I totally know what you mean, because I would call him brother. I've received a text message, was it last week or a couple of weeks ago, from one of my relatives, said he has passed away. And that was just sometimes you realize what's the point? Whatever we're doing, there is no point of doing things as long as
I get that.
Yeah, so that was the moment, kind of a realization.
And did you do, when that happened to you, did you do the same stupid thing as I did when it happened to me with my sister rather than a brother? But I got the phone call and said this friend, woman was dead, and I went, she can't be dead. I was with her yesterday, as though being with me somehow was going to stop her having died. And for the next couple of days, you just, there are no words for it, are there?
Yeah, it's quite strange, because the thing is, when you're little, you're all together in the same family. You grow together, and then when you get older, you get married, you get your own family, and you just eventually, would you call it drift away, or just you have your own life in different countries, doing your own thing, and you're not staying in the same house, not as close as you used to be before, and haven't communicated with him long time. So it's just very strange feeling. But
no, the person I'm describing is I have a phrase here, a sister by God, if not by blood. We weren't physically related, but we were brother sister close, if you see what I mean. So she was a family that I had grown into, rather than, you're talking about family you've left there. She was a family I'd grown into, and that sense of despair was overwhelming.
Yeah.
Sorry, let's talk about something else, because I'm just going to be quiet and sulk and cry if we're not careful. So let's move to a different question quick.
Well, let's talk about who was the best teacher in your life, the person you looked up to.
That's pretty easy, actually. It's a guy called Mr. Worrell, who was a physical geography teacher. I was kind of okay at geography, but it wasn't anything special to me. But I can distinctly remember a moment where he showed us a video of all the things that were wrong in the world, and just finished this devastating video, and then said, the bad news is that my generation has completely screwed everything up. The good news is that your generation has the chance to put it right. And that was a point where I kind of went, okay, I want to do this thing. I want to do this thing called geography. I want to become something as a geographer, which is where the spatial epidemiology thing came from, which my PhD was, and all of that kind of just came very clear from that one moment where I kind of went, the world is mucked up. I want to understand in what ways it is mucked up so that I can start unmucking it. I don't think I've actually succeeded much in unmucking it, but I've tried here and there, every now and again. I've done my best. Yeah, I've eaten a lot of chocolate biscuits. I've drunk a lot of tea. I've made some differences occasionally along the way.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've got like people who will learn, and that had a defining moment in our life. And it's
he was
a very simple thing.
Yeah, he was a great bloke. I distinctly remember on one occasion on a Wednesday afternoon we used to go out from school and do some outdoor activity stuff. And I can remember on one occasion I was abseiling, so I was leaning back and I'd gone over the cliff and I was walking backwards down the rock face. And Mr. Worrell was my safety rope man, and all of a sudden my rope went taut so that I couldn't go down any longer because and he just popped his head over the top of the cliff and went, "So, about this essay that you handed in yesterday, it was rubbish." What? Look, I'm 30 feet off the ground. No. Until you tell me the correct answers, yada yada. And he just left me there with rock face. Not for very long. It felt like about half an hour. I'm sure it was only about 3 minutes. But the stuff that he challenged me about on that occasion kind of stuck in your head because he understood how to make stuff interesting. He understood how to push people. He understood what it was that motivated different pupils. There were pupils like me he could play with and tease with. There were other pupils where he was much more rigid and much more rules bound, and he understood almost all the time which approach to use with which pupil to get them to understand what he's saying most and to get them to love the subject most, because the two things go hand in hand. If you love what you're learning, it's much easier to learn it.
So he had that people skill.
Yes, and he was inspirational, as I say, in this video when he went, this is the way in which my generation has screwed up the world. The good news is that we're showing you, your generation, how to unscrew it. So there is still hope. That was quite a whopping great responsibility to put on a bunch of teenagers, but he judged it right. Of that class, of the ones I'm still in touch with, quite a few of us have gone on to do something. Oh gosh, if I say have gone on to do something quite special, that sounds quite big-headed, doesn't it? Sorry. But they've gone on to do interesting and interesting and quite big things in the world.
Fab. Continue to that, I'll ask, what makes you feel powerful? What's your superpower? That's what our friend Adam.
My superpower is my wife. That's easy. The question you're also going to ask is what motivates me? It's going to be my wife. What keeps you going? My wife. What are you frightened of? My wife. It's sorry, I'm being facetious just to avoid the question. What was the question again, Suki? What makes me strong? What makes me feel strong is
strong. What makes you feel powerful?
Powerful. My friends.
I was looking for some traits within you.
It's my friends.
Look things inside.
No, it's my friends. It's always my friends. I've got, my back is so covered, it's unbelievable. If I drop the ball, I've only got to make a phone call and somebody somewhere will pick it up for me. So what makes me feel powerful is it's the network of friends that I've got around me. They're never further away than that. And rarely would I even need to use that because we've become so close over the years. There are very few of us. Don't get me wrong, it's not a big network. But quite often you don't even have to have a conversation. Just a raised eyebrow is an entire conversation with people who know you so very well. So, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm going to tell you this, but for some time I was hysterical mute. I couldn't speak. And what makes me feel powerful? The friends who were able to speak in my voice on my behalf without ever abusing. It never occurred to me that they were going to abuse speaking on my behalf because they could have said anything they wanted. I physically could not speak. And most people didn't know I couldn't speak because they spoke for me. They covered for me so superbly well, and said what they knew I would wanted to have said, and said it in such a way that it just became part of the natural flow of the conversation. So, in a restaurant, someone would ask me what I wanted to eat, and I couldn't answer the question. So somebody on my right would go, "Oh, I've just changed my mind. Could I have the so-and-so because Simon's going to have the such and such?" And that made it look to the waiter like she was changing her mind about what she wanted because I was going to have so-and-so. I was going to have a different dish. But actually what it did was tell the waiter what both of us were eating without me having to open my mouth.
But because they know you that well.
Yeah. They knew when I couldn't. Sometimes I could speak, but they could see in my eyes when I wasn't going to be able to speak, and they could cover the gaps.
What do you mean you can't speak? Is it
exactly that? I couldn't speak.
Like even now sometimes?
Rarely now. Almost never now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't. If I've been to the hard session at the gym, sometimes I can't speak now because I'm kind of going because I'm out of breath. But no. This was a while ago. This was a long time ago, Suki.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. So
to answer what makes me feel strong, having those friends around me.
Mm-hmm. So like know you inside out.
Yeah.
Which is special because I think you are very special, aren't you?
Special in both meanings of the word, probably. Under Section 13 of the Mental Health Act is the one that you're thinking of, I suspect.
Oh, I don't know. I don't do like that detail. The special is one type of
special as in slightly crazy. I think that's the gist of it. But so, it was that they cover for me, and between us, there's very little that we can't do. Very little.
Mm-hmm. That's very nice. Like having that network of friends. Yeah. So, what makes you laugh at most?
Laugh. Do you know the sitcom Big Bang Theory?
I've heard
Big Bang Theory. Okay. Big Bang Theory is one of the reasons it's so funny is because it's so acutely, brilliantly observed. Most people think it's a sitcom. Having worked in research in a university for 24 years, it's a documentary. It is funny because I can go, oh yeah, that's Professor such and such that I used to work with, and that's the PhD student who did so and so, and that's the lab technician. Because the characters are so superbly well drawn. Superbly drawn. It's cleverer than it looks. It looks funny and it looks clever, but it's even cleverer than that. So the brutal answer, Big Bang Theory. There you go. Really simple.
Okay, so you travel a lot because your daughter 1, daughter 2 is all around the world. They're doing that charity and then working there in shelter. Yeah. So you must be traveling so many different places. What's the most unusual thing you've ever eaten?
An ant.
How can you eat an ant? That's just so tiny.
It's big. It was a big ass ant. It was in where was I? Colombia. I think I was in Colombia. Yeah, they've got some really big ants in Colombia. And there was a guy on the street selling fried ants. So the Colombians ate fried ants. So why wouldn't I eat fried ants just to find out what it's a bit like? The answer to the question is gritty and salty. Doesn't really taste of anything except salt and crunchiness. But yeah, definitely, an ant. Maybe inch and a half long, and maybe half a dozen of them. So yeah, I think that's the most unusual thing I've eaten.
Oh wow, that's interesting because I don't do ants. I know, like you're very very fond of your daughters and like your family, and it's just such a close unit, and of course family. So what's the favorite family tradition of yours?
Christmas is big for us. We have dozens and dozens of traditions around Christmas. So, for example, somewhere in the beginning or middle of Christmas, the family will come home to decorate the Christmas tree. Or from wherever we are, we'll come home and decorate the Christmas tree. And our house has got huge, enormous, great, the ceilings are 13 feet tall. And our Christmas trees scrape the ceiling, and sometimes we have to cut the top off the Christmas tree together. So it's a really big thing for us. And then Christmas Eve, it's the stereotypical putting a dirty great hiking boot at the bottom of the chimney, and then putting desiccated coconut around it, and then taking the boot away. So when we come downstairs the following morning, it looks like it's Father Christmas's footprint with snow having fallen off it, and all the traditional Christmas stuff of just sitting around on a Christmas morning and passing the presents to each other. Then going for a swim in the North Sea on Christmas Day. Don't ask whose idea that was. It's a really stupid idea.
Just all of you, like all of you as a family.
No, my wife has too much common sense to go swimming on Christmas Day in the North Sea. She stands there and guards the clothes. And then a meal together in the afternoon and evening, cooking together. And then eating together we've got a gorgeous house with a fire and stuff like that. So just sitting and have those. I don't think we're doing it. We can't do it now because the kids are on. So, for example, Steph's on shifts on Christmas Day, but we do it somehow. So, for example, this Christmas, we didn't have Christmas this year until very nearly Easter because that was the first time we could all get together. But we had Christmas 2.5 months late. So we did all the traditions of Christmas just 2.5 months late.
Did you actually bring Christmas tree?
Little one.
Yeah.
Yes, we didn't do the huge great Christmas tree, but we just did a little one. Yeah.
Yeah.
With lights and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe it's 7 minutes past 9. I could just sit and listen to you all night long.
Time to go and do something more grown up, Suki.
Grown-ups, yeah, right. Okay. So, what's your I'mPossible moment? The achievement that you would never thought you would do, but then
just one moment. Just one moment.
As many as you want, like probably 1 or 2 would do.
I've worked in theatres. There have been so many moments when you look at it and go, that was more by luck than judgment. There's just one moment that sticks out, and it's a lighting effect. It's just one trick. The show ran and it was a dance show, and it ran for 1.5 hours. There were a couple of 100 lighting cues in it, but there was one lighting cue in a 7-minute dance. There were 2 or 3 lighting cues just within 30 seconds in the 7-minute dance. And you just look at it and go, nobody else would have thought of that, but it really turns this dance from good to great just by using shadows in a certain particular way to highlight the dancers' faces and things. It was just that one little moment where I didn't think it was going to work because we were so far behind timetable, we hadn't had a chance to test it. And then I pushed the button to turn the lights on, and you could just hear the audience going, it's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
What about for you, like personally, not the work related? Have you ever thought you've been publishing however many books? Or are you going to be a creator of this?
Which one have you got? Oh, the presentation design pack.
Yeah.
No, I knew that was going to happen. I knew the presentation design pack was going to happen because I'd got a lot of spare time last year. For one thing or another, there were some health issues in the family, which meant that I stopped working for a while to cope with the health issues in the family. Not mine, but other people's. The good news, by the way, if there's anybody watching, they've turned out okay. The stuff is all good. but that meant I got a lot of time, so I could sit on trains and think. So I knew that one was coming. I knew I had got that. I didn't know whether it was going to be any good or not, but I knew it was going to happen because I'd got time to do some. I got time to do some thinking for that one. There are lots and lots of occasions where that happens, but by the time you get to my age, to be honest, Suki, if I'm like 58, if you're supposed to go, you don't look 58. I'll try that again. By the time you get to my age, Suki, I'm 58. What's
I supposed to do?
You're supposed to go, you don't look 58, Simon.
You don't look 58, Simon.
Thank you very much indeed. Oh, can we edit that?
I don't. If I could edit videos, I would be like, that'll be my I'mPossible moment,
But to be honest, if you've got to 58 and you can't list a dozen things where you've gone, I should not have got away with that, then you've not been trying hard enough. So I'm going to very carefully not answer the question, because there are maybe 24 times when I can go, that shouldn't have worked, but it did. How did we get away with that? That was, that kind of stuff. There have been theatre moments where I've heard audiences gasp. I've got standing ovations and all kinds of stuff like that. I've seen research science come alive where I've known things and changed the way government works because of my research. That's pretty damned cool. That happened a couple of times. It's quite good. And in my public speaking and professional training life, there's changes the way people think. So there's lots of occasions where you think, yeah, I've made a significant difference. But if you can't do that, then you haven't been pushing hard enough.
Okay.
What a pretentious sentence.
So what's your message? What's your message for our viewers? That would be your last question.
Last question. I'm going to quote a dance choreographer at this point called Amanda. And it's a very similar quote to the way we opened, which is, my dad's thing about don't hit it hard with a hammer, just get a bigger hammer. Amanda's line to these dancers was, if it looks like you are working hard, you're not working hard enough. If it looks like you're working hard, you're not working hard enough. So it's all about doing the slog, doing the prep until it becomes easy, until it looks easy. That's a very serious, it's a very serious expression on your face there, Suki.
Yeah, I exactly know what you mean. To make it easy. So you have to put time and practice beforehand. Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of things behind that as well, such as just because somebody else makes it look easy doesn't mean it is for them. It means they've put in the time and energy, and it doesn't mean you won't be able to do it. You've just got to put in the time and the energy. So there's a whole bunch of things behind that, but I do like this encapsulation phrase of just because if it looks like you're working hard, you're not working hard enough. You go on stage and you make a presentation, it should look like it's an absolute breeze. Yeah. And it looks like it's an absolute breeze because you've prepped for it.
Yeah. Have you read that Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, the 10,000 hours?
Yeah, I have. It's a shame he got that wrong, isn't it? And that's a prime example of what I mean by research science being misrepresented. Because Gladwell said in that book, do 10,000 hours and you can master anything. That's not what the research says. The research says 10,000 hours on average, depending upon what it is that you are trying to master, of deliberative practice. So it's not just doing any old rubbish for 10,000 hours. It is doing certain things in a particular way for 10,000 hours. And that 10,000 hours is an average. Mastering the violin takes more than 10,000 hours. Mastering the cajon takes a lot less than 10,000 hours. Mastering making pancakes takes about 1 hour. So that 10,000 hours is an average. But Gladwell represented it as, and people have understood it as, if you put 10,000 hours into anything, you'll become a master. And that's not what the research says. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. Not saying don't do it, but don't hold the 10,000 hours up as the thing, because it's not. It's an average.
Yeah, that's at least like 10 years if it's part-time.
Give or take, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what people they've interpreted that, and Gladwell's books that go on to say things like, that's why the Beatles were great, because they were playing in Germany and they got 10,000 hours of stage time before they became famous. Or Bill Gates became a successful coder because he'd been coding since he was 9, and therefore he's got his 10,000 hours, yada, 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 yada.
Yeah.
That's oversimplifying the research to the point where it makes my blood boil.
Mm-hmm. You're like a research scientist, bitch.
I'm a scientist at heart, a science communicator, but that means that you have to get the science right before you can communicate it.
Okay. Right. Thanks very much for your time today, Simon. It's been great to have you.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed it. I was dreading it, but I've enjoyed it, Suki. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, because I know you do lots of presentation training, and most of the podcasts are like you always talk about presentation, and I just wanted to get to know you more, a bit different side.
Have I managed to avoid the personal questions as much as I hoped to avoid the personal questions, or have you managed to get personal stuff out of me?
For me, it was great.
Okay, then.
See how it goes. Yeah. Okay, doke. Thanks very much. Right. And thank you very much for everyone who's tuned in. And we'll see you on Sunday.
Right. Bye. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.